You know that kind of silence? The one you only get in a testing room?
Oh yeah, it's thick.
It's so heavy. You can hear the clock. You can hear your own heart, and there's someone in the corner with a clipboard just watching you.
That is a universal nightmare.
Yeah.
It brings me right back to my driving test. Just awful.
We've all been there. But today, we're talking about a test where you don't just write an essay. You have to perform. Physically, mentally, and verbally.
We're doing a deep dive into the Stott Pilates certification exam.
And in the fitness world, this exam is, well, it's a legend.
It really is. It has this reputation for being incredibly rigorous, super technical, and, let's be honest, absolutely terrifying for a lot of people.
Terrifying is the word. I was reading our source material for this, and the pressure is just palpable. People spend months, sometimes years, getting ready for this 1 hour.
And the feeling is always the same. This crushing need to be, physically perfect.
Right. Like if they can't do the splits or hold a perfect plank, it's an automatic fail.
That is the #1 assumption going in. I need to look like the person in the textbook.
But, and this is the whole point of our deep dive today, that assumption is actually the first mistake you can make.
It's the first step toward failure.
Our source for this is an amazing in-depth interview with Caroline Berger de Fémynie. She's an instructor trainer, founder of Pilates, and she basically sat down with Farid Garbi to decode this exam.
And her big message is simple. You are studying for the wrong test.
It's such a fascinating idea. She says the examiners are not looking for a performance.
No, they're not looking for a perfect body. They're evaluating something she calls professional posture.
Okay, professional posture. When I first read that, I'm picturing, shoulders back, a nice smile.
Right, like customer service posture.
Yeah.
But it's so much deeper than that.
What does she mean by it then?
It's not about how you look. It's about how you see. It's your ability to read the body in front of you, to organize movement in a logical way, and most importantly, to keep that person safe.
So it's a shift from look at me doing this to look at me teaching you how to do this.
Exactly. It's a teaching test, not a talent show.
So in this deep dive, we're going to walk through the 5 major errors that Caroline lays out. These are the traps that make really smart, capable students fail.
And we're going to go from the obvious stuff, the strategic mistakes, down to the invisible errors in philosophy that are so much harder to spot.
Okay, let's jump in. The very first trap she mentions is the trap of the static image versus the living body.
This is a huge one. And it comes directly from how people study. I mean, you have your manuals, you have these photos.
Perfect photos with perfect bodies in perfect form.
And you memorize it. Inhale here, exhale there, leg at 45 degrees.
Well, sure, it makes sense. It's like learning a script. You want to know what good looks like so you can copy it. Why is that a trap?
It seems logical, but Caroline calls it the photo error. And she has this quote that just floored me. She says, an image doesn't breathe, doesn't tremble, and doesn't compensate.
Doesn't tremble. That really hits.
But a real person does. In the exam, you're not teaching a mannequin. You have a real human body with a history.
A body that might be stiff or nervous.
Or has a tight hip or a sore neck. And if you only memorize that perfect picture, what happens?
You try to force it.
You try to jam the square peg into the round hole. You're so hypnotized by the image in your head that you miss what's actually happening. You miss a hip that's, fleeing the work, or a shoulder that's hiking up to protect itself.
You're seeing what you want to see, not what's actually there.
Exactly. You're projecting perfection onto a messy reality. Caroline uses this brilliant metaphor for it.
Oh, the language one?
Yes. She says memorizing the images is like learning the alphabet but not learning to speak.
That's a great way to put it. You can recite your ABCs, but you can't ask for directions.
Right. And the exam is a conversation between you and the client's body. If you're just reciting a poem, the second they do something unexpected, and they always will, you just freeze. You have no words.
And that fear of freezing, that leads right into the next type of error she talks about. Strategic errors.
Bad strategy, yeah.
The one that really surprised me was this survival strategy she calls the numbers game.
It's a total desperation move. She says some candidates, out of pure fear, decide they're only going to memorize like 8 beginner exercises and 4 intermediate ones. That's it.
Really? That feels like such a huge gamble. Why?
It's an attempt to control the chaos. They think, if I can just master these 12 things, I won't make a mistake. They're trying to limit the variables.
But what if an examiner asks for something else?
Well, you often get to choose the programming, so it's not the main issue. The real trap is the client's body.
What do you mean?
So imagine you walk in with your golden 12 moves, feeling confident, but then you do your postural analysis and you realize the client has, say, a history of a herniated disc.
Oh.
And suddenly 3 of your 12 exercises are completely unsafe for that person.
Oh, wow. So your safe list just became a minefield.
Exactly. And now you have no plan B. Your toolbox is empty. You panic. Or, even worse, you teach the unsafe exercise anyway because it's all you know.
Which has to be an automatic fail.
An instant fail. Stott Pilates is all about adapting the method. If you only have one key, you can't open any other doors.
This brings us to what feels like the biggest intellectual error. Caroline calls it the golden thread.
Yeah, the link. The link between what you see and what you do.
This is where it all comes together or falls apart.
It's a simple logic chain, really. She breaks it down into 3 questions. 1, where does the body start? That's your postural analysis.
Okay.
2, how does it move? That's your functional analysis. And 3, what do I do now? That's your programming.
See, that sounds simple, so where do people go wrong?
They treat them like separate chapters in a book. They'll do this brilliant postural analysis. I mean, they've memorized the checklist. Anterior tilt, forward head, unstable pelvis. They say all the right words.
They check the boxes.
But then, 5 minutes later, they program an exercise that completely ignores everything they just said. Or worse, makes it worse.
Can you give me a real-world example of that?
Sure. Let's say you see in your analysis that the client has an unstable pelvis. They can't keep their hips still. But then you immediately give them a leg circle with no support, and you just watch them wobble all over the mat.
So your analysis was just for show?
It was decorative analysis. You said the words to sound smart, but you didn't actually use the information to navigate. Caroline says the postural analysis gives you your coordinates. If you ignore them, you're flying blind.
And she gets really specific, too. It's not enough to just say unstable.
No, you have to know how it's unstable. Is it in the sagittal plane?
Okay, break that down. Sagittal is?
Forward and backward movement. Think tucking your tailbone or arching your back.
A front-to-back wobble. Got it.
Versus the frontal plane, which is side to side, like a boat rocking in the water.
And why does that distinction matter so much?
Because the muscles you use to fix a front-to-back wobble are different from the ones you use for a side-to-side wobble. If you don't know the difference, your cues are just a guess, and guessing gets people hurt.
It's sobering. It shows this is about mechanics, not just memory.
Which is a perfect lead-in to segment 3, the invisible errors.
Right. This isn't about choosing the wrong exercise. It's about how you teach it, the vibe, the control.
And she starts with the setup. She calls it the exam within the exam.
That's so interesting. We think the exercise starts when the movement starts.
But she says the quality of the entire movement is determined before a single muscle moves.
It's all in a starting position.
It's the foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Is the pelvis neutral? Are the ribs soft? Is the neck long? Candidates rush this because they're nervous.
And once you start moving from a bad position, I assume it's all downhill from there.
It's a domino effect.
Mm-hmm.
The movement becomes a series of compensations. Then you spend the whole exercise chasing 5 different problems, all because you didn't take 10 seconds to set it up right.
You're chasing errors instead of preventing them. That sounds so stressful.
It is. And it makes you look frantic, which brings up the next invisible error, pacing.
I can relate to this. When I'm stressed, I talk faster, I move faster. It's just human nature.
It's a fight or flight response.
Yeah.
But in a teaching exam, that speed is deadly. Caroline says candidates accelerate, and they don't let the client breathe.
Or feel.
Pilates is about precision. And to get that knowledge into someone else's body, you have to slow down. If you're just barking cues, it's all just noise.
It's a transmission, not a race.
Exactly. And linked to that is the error of surface corrections.
This is the lower your shoulders or pull your abs in type of thing.
Right. They're not wrong, but they're often correcting the symptom, not the cause. Why are the shoulders up in the first place?
Stress. The springs are too heavy.
Or maybe they're not using their scapular muscles correctly. So if you just say shoulders down, they might just jam them down with other muscles and create new tension. You have to fix the root cause.
And there was one more in this section that I found really fascinating. The forgotten phase.
Ah, yes. The return. The eccentric phase.
We focus so much on the effort part. The push, the curl up. But why is coming back to the start so important?
Because that's where true control lives. Pushing away is the concentric phase. The muscle shortens. But controlling the return is the eccentric phase, where the muscle lengthens under tension.
And candidates just let it go.
They let the client just flop back to the start. Or they let the springs on the reformer just slam shut. To an examiner, Losing control on the return shows you don't have true mastery of the work.
So we've covered a lot of technical stuff, but now I want to shift to something more linguistic. The interview mentions the language barrier, right? Using English names when teaching in another language.
It's a great point about communication. The rule is simple. English names, the 100 teasers, are standard. But the explanation has to be in the client's language.
You can't just shout short spine massage at a French-speaking client and expect them to know what's happening.
Not at all. Yeah. But there's a deeper language trap she warns about, using anatomical terms decoratively.
Decorative anatomy. I love that. Like just throwing out the word multifidus to sound smart.
That is precisely what it is. A candidate will say, engage your transverse abdominis, but they're just saying the words.
How does the examiner know?
Because they're looking at the client. You can say, engage your core all day, but if the examiner sees the client's pelvis shaking, they know you're just reciting from a script. You aren't connecting the word to the reality.
It's that reciting the alphabet versus speaking the language thing all over again.
And it applies to the 6 principles of Pilates, too. You know, breathing, concentration, control.
The list they have you memorize.
Right. But Caroline says they aren't a poem to recite. They are quality filters.
A quality filter, what does that mean?
It means you have to embody them. If you tell a client to take a deep lateral breath, but you're taking these short panic breaths into your chest,
You're busted. You're a hypocrite.
you are contradicting your own teaching. You have to be the calm in the room. You can't ask for control while you're projecting chaos.
Which seems so hard when everything is on the line. I mean, part of professionalism is knowing when to adapt, right? But candidates are afraid to modify exercises.
Yes, they have this fear that if they make an exercise easier, they look weak. Like they don't know the real version.
But the truth is the opposite.
It's the exact opposite.
I know.
Modifying, because you saw something, a client wincing, their neck tensing. That's a sign of strength. It shows you're watching. It shows you're prioritizing safety over choreography.
And if you see something wrong and you don't modify, you are failing the test.
You're failing the test of professionalism.
We're coming into the final segment, and I want to zoom out to the philosophy of all this. Caroline really talks about the difference between showing and teaching.
This is the absolute core of it. Showing is just doing the move next to the client. Follow me.
A workout, buddy.
Exactly. Teaching is about transforming the other person's understanding so they can do it on their own. And a big part of that is silence.
Candidates hate silence.
They're terrified of it. They feel they have to fill every second with chatter. But she says one well-placed sentence is worth 10 frantic corrections. Guide, don't just commentate.
And under stress, we tend to go one of two ways. Too rigid or too scattered.
The rigid ones stick to the plan no matter what the person in front of them is doing. The scattered ones try to correct every single tiny flaw at once.
And her advice is simple. Choose your battles.
Yes. Hierarchy is part of teaching. If the client's neck is in a dangerous position, fix that first. If their pinky toe is a little crooked, let it go for now. Fix the structure, then the decoration.
So as we wrap up, what's her advice for the night before the exam, when the panic is at its peak?
I love this advice. She says, stop. Stop adding knowledge. Stop cramming.
That is the hardest thing to do. You always think there's one more thing you need to learn.
But the system is full. More information just clogs the pipes. She says to return to the essential. Do less, but do it right.
Do less, but do it right. That's a great mantra.
And she leaves us with this one philosophical idea that I think just frames everything. She says, your role is not to impress, but to enlighten.
Wow. Not to impress, but to enlighten. That just takes all the ego out of it.
It does. Because if you're trying to impress, you're thinking about yourself. Do I look smart?
But if you're trying to enlighten...
You're thinking about them. Do they get it? Do they feel it? That shift in focus is professional posture.
She calls the exam a mirror.
Yes. Not a trap. It's a mirror that reflects whether the intelligence of the movement is actually alive in you. If you're just reciting, the mirror shows a robot. If you're researching in real time with the client, the mirror shows a teacher.
That is such a powerful way to frame it. It's not a test of memory, it's a test of presence.
Presence and service.
So, as we end this deep dive, here's a thought for you, the listener. It doesn't matter if you're a Pilates instructor, a CEO, or a parent teaching your kid to tie their shoes. Are you just reciting the alphabet? Going through memorized motions?
Or are you truly speaking the language? Are you having a conversation with the reality that's right there in front of you?
That's the difference between being a technician and being a master. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.
Stay curious.